Welcome to Digital Learning, an initiative of Directorate of Collegiate Education, Government of Karnataka. Eloquentia 1, the title of the first semester General English textbook prescribed for the BSc stream by Bengaluru City University. I'm Nandana NJ, Assistant Professor of English, Government First Grade College, Malleshwaram, Bengaluru. In the textbook is divided into two parts, the literary part and the language component. In the language component, dialogue writing is one of the in fact, it comes at the rather the last part of the text. So dialogue writing is one essential component in the language unit. I shall be discussing this unit. The contents of this session: recapitulation of previous knowledge, objectives of dialogue writing, session outcomes, origin of the term dialogue, what is a dialogue, the definition, purpose of dialogue writing, basic format and structure, rules for writing dialogue, the types of dialogues, and stages of a dialogue. So we shall be going in this order. First, a recapitulation of the previous knowledge. Have you ever read or watched a scene with great or awkward dialogue? What stood out? Uh, if this question is asked in the class, I'm sure students would definitely recollect movies or any popular TV series that they have watched, or in fact, in certain cases, they can even recollect a conversation they had with any of their friends, siblings, etc. And what was awkward about the dialogue? Well, if I have to answer, what I have felt in one such instance was the dialogue was awkward because I felt the person was talking in a positive manner, but the non-verbal cues that I was getting for the person was rather in the negative. So I felt it was rather, the synchronization in the communication aspect did not happen. The second part: what makes a conversation interesting or dull in real life? Well, it depends on many things, humor or lack of humor. It depends on person to person. But then when you go to the fuel station, you ask the fuel attendant to fill in fuel, and then you cannot, converse in humor there, where unnecessary humor also leads to problems. So it depends on the conversation, the context, and various other factors. Why do you think writers use dialogues in stories or plays? Well, this is a very, you know, uh, a question which actually has a sense here. Why do you think writers use dialogue in stories or plays? That is because stories or plays move forward through the interaction of the characters and their dialogue. In fact, as you are reading a story or watching a play or watching a serial or a movie for that matter, you tend to see characters on the screen or on the stage, and the characters talk amongst themselves or the dialogue amongst themselves, and the story proceeds towards them. In fact, we can say that the characters dialogues are written by the writers. The writers use the characters to mouth their dialogues or their point of view through the characters. The next question: can a story be told effectively without dialogue? What might be missing? Yes, a story can definitely be told without dialogue, but then what might be missing might be the effectiveness of it. There are innumerable movies, silent movies, to be truthful. In fact, one just example, or many such genre of movies where dialogues are quintessentially absent there. Even without a dialogue, the movies have made powerful impact. It shows dialogue is definitely not the most important element, but then with the dialogue, all the elements of story or all the elements of drama seem to materialize. The last question, this is actually a very good question. Do people always say exactly what they mean? How does this affect written dialogue? Well, there are two questions here. For the first question, do people always say exactly what they mean? The answer is no. People do not always say exactly what they mean, and what they say is what they don't mean. In fact, it is always the other way around. And how does this affect a written dialogue? It depends. In a movie or a story that you're reading, might be the reading between the lines might happen, but in real life situations, when the person is saying something and they don't mean it, that leads to complications in relationships. So all these questions that we just discussed shows the essence or the importance of dialogue writing. What are the objectives of dialogue writing? Uh, through the course of this session, the student will be able to hone or improve writing and speaking skills, develop critical thinking and communication skills, enhance creativity in conversations, build clarity and precision in expression, train students to become professional dialogue writers. So the session outcomes are whether the objectives of this session are met. So by the end of this session, learners will be able to define and understand dialogue writing, identify the structure and components of a good dialogue, apply rules for formatting and writing effective dialogue, create original dialogues on diverse topics, evaluate the role of dialogue in storytelling and drama. Now let us look at the origin of the term dialogue. The word dialogue comes from Greek. The original word, the etymology is dialogos. So the meaning of the word dia means through, logos meaning speech or reason. So when put together, dialogue means through speech or through reason, and it means or implies an exchange of thoughts or ideas between people. Dialogue also can be interpreted as dia means two, and logo or logos mean the speech. So speech that occurs between two people is known as dialogue. Here I would like to add a bit of general information. As English literature students or general English students, we are aware that human beings, I keep reiterating this in my class, we human beings or the so-called Homo sapiens are one of the species created by the God or evolution of science, whichever you believe in. What is it that sets the Homo sapiens apart from the other species? There are two things which gives us that edge over the other species. And what are they? One is the capacity to reason or think. And the second is the capacity to speak or speech. These are the two aspects that we have, which the other species apparently do not have. Just because whatever they speak is not our language doesn't necessarily mean that they cannot speak. And whether they think or not, it is not up for us to decide. But then we are supposed to make our lives better with these two unique features, characteristic features, as we are seated on top of the pyramid there. But then most of the complexities in our lives are due to this speech itself. In fact, what is spoken, what is not spoken, what is implied, reading between the lines. In fact, we can see that most of the verbal communication or wherever voice is there or any sort of communication between human beings always has some sort of complexity. So let us proceed further. What is a dialogue? Let us try to define. A dialogue is a written or a spoken conversational exchange between two or more people. It can also be defined as a meaningful interaction where both participants contribute. It can be casual or serious based on the context, and it is used in stories, plays, films, and everyday life. So dialogue is very important. That is definite here. Uh, to Let us look at the dictionary definition there. The Collins Dictionary defines the dialogue as a conversation between two people in a film, book, or play. And while in writing, dialogue is the transcription or presentation of such conversation in the text form. So we can say that the picture also gives the same meaning there. The definition of the dialogue would be words that characters speak. It could be also known as conversation, and the antonym of this is silence. So dialogue and conversations are more or less synonymous. Purpose of dialogue writing. What is the purpose? Why do we require dialogue writing? Not just to give information or reveal the plot. As we see the story or watch the movie, the story proceeds further. The plot is revealed through the interaction of the characters. Is it the only objective? Of course not. The main purpose is communication between the characters. It also shows characters' reaction, emotions, and intentions. For example, if one character is very happy, she need not necessarily say the words, I am happy. Maybe her expression, the laughter, the smile on her face also will show. But then when she says those words, I'm very happy, then it will definitely add onus to it. The dialogues also build conflict, advances the plots, and it also reveals the personality. If you have observed, if you have watched any movies or plays or read stories, a few characters have this certain unique way of uttering a few things that adds to their peculiarity. So dialogue writing, it also creates realism and depth in a story. The basic format and structures of dialogues. Before engaging in dialogue writing, decide the characters and the plot or the context. Each character's dialogue begins on a new line. Indent each dialogue line. Use line spacing for paragraph length speeches. Maintain consistent tense and tone. Use speaker tags. For example, John said, Sheila replied, for clarity. We shall be looking at this in the next session, wherein I have discussed in detail the examples from the textbook and also worked out the practice exercises. What are the rules for writing dialogue? As with everything, there are a few rules before writing dialogues. Use correct grammar and spelling. Include natural pauses and realistic flow. Begin a new paragraph for each speaker. Keep the dialogue purposeful. Avoid fluff. Fluff as in unnecessary verbose. Ensure clarity in who's speaking. Show, don't tell. Reveal the character through words. And a few more rules. Ensure correct grammar and spelling to maintain flow and strong characterization. Allow pauses between lines to reflect natural conversation dynamics. Yes, even just look at, recollect any conversation that you have had in your everyday life. The conversation goes in a spontaneous manner. There is a natural pause between the flow of character. So try to include the same while writing a dialogue. Begin a new paragraph for each new speaker. If the same character continues, place all sentences in one paragraph. And this is very important. Use dialogue tags, for example, he whispered, Jane said, etc. to indicate speaker and tone. Read dialogue aloud to check for natural sound and clarity. Revise and edit multiple times to enhance voice clarity and consistency. Some more rules are given here. Let us just go through them. A good dialogue must have natural and conversational language. You might say, well, I'm writing a historical play. I'm going to have the conversation between two characters where they are talking in Old English. Yes, might be, but still make sure that the conversation is natural. Do not make it too artificial for people, for anybody to understand it. Likewise, a good dialogue must be lively and forceful. We must introduce digressions and side issues in our dialogue. The gestures and movements of the speaker must be indicated. When you're writing a play, for example, the chief character, the primary character, is in distress. When the character is in distress, some gestures like him running his fingers through the hair or trying to, console himself or trying to wipe his tears, these things must be clearly indicated. When a man talks, he does not talk with his tongue only, his whole body talks. He makes easy, explanatory, uneasy gestures. He walks with his feet. So the tone of the various speakers' voice should be indicated if possible. One should make one's dialogue dramatic, and this can be done by adding a good deal of human interest to it. One speaker should represent one point of view and the other speaker should oppose him. Arrange the pros and cons carefully. Do not make a dialogue the monopoly of one speaker. Let one speaker sometimes interrupt the other in real conversation. They add to its naturalness. So definitely, because in day-to-day conversation also, there are many a times when one person interrupts the other. Likewise, when you are writing a dialogue for a story or a drama, make sure there is that at least one instance where one character interrupts the other. It looks natural there. Use exclamatory words in your dialogues. Bring your dialogue in an interesting way so that the reader's attention may be caught from the start. Now, this is the first difference in the kind, or this is the first kind, various kinds of dialogues. This will be the first one that I'll be dealing with. The dialogues can be divided into external dialogue. Let me just put my camera slightly down so that you can see. The first dialogue, or the first difference that we tend to say, is the external dialogue and the internal dialogue or the internal monologue. Now you might wonder, what does external dialogue mean? External, as the word itself says, outward. to look at the definition. This puts characters in action, provides character interaction or characters talking between each other. It gives insight into relationship between characters, and relationship development can be seen in the external dialogue which happens between the other characters. Now, what is this internal dialogue or internal monologue? Observe the word mono. Mono means single. Then what does this mean? Here, internal dialogue or internal monologue refers to the conversation that we tend to have with ourselves. This is very important. More than the external dialogue, internal dialogue or the internal monologue is what we always have. Outwardly, our voice is heard. Inwardly, we hear our own voice. So internal dialogue puts the reader inside a specific character's head, is subjective, limited to a particular character's point of view, their thoughts and perspective of the world. While reading a story, internal dialogue helps us read the thoughts of the character. It gives the reader insight on a particular character's identity and personality. It gives a front row seat to that character's development. While reading a story, you can see the character's point of view. Like in real everyday life, you have this internal dialogue with yourself. All of us have this most of the times. In fact, we talk to ourselves, we talk with our heart and we talk to our mind also. But the only thing is, most of the times we don't listen to our heart or mind. Now, there is this one thing where the circle interacts or intersects, and there is this overlapping thing. Here it shows gives insight into character, personality wise, develops character. That means both external and internal are very important. Conveys info to readers to move the story forward. Now, this was the first kind of distinction we saw in the kinds of dialogue: external dialogue that we have with others, and internal dialogue or the internal monologue that we have with ourselves. One more, a few more points related to the external versus internal dialogue. The external dialogue or the outer dialogue can be known as spoken conversation between characters, while inner dialogue are known to be characters' thoughts to themselves. As I told you, I would like to reiterate the same point. Inner dialogue is very important. The inner dialogue occurs between a character and his mind. Even if outwardly nobody is listening to us, our mind or our heart will definitely listen to us. Now, coming to dialogues, there are various kinds of dialogues. Every dialogue can't be generalized as two people talking. The context also definitely differs. First one, information giving, where one person is giving the information and the other is receiving it. Conversation, it could be casual, informal, serious. The context differs. Retelling, where maybe elderly person is narrating a story, etc. Discourse, like the one that we are having, wherein a teacher gives a discourse and the other person listens to it. Dialogue, where two people engage in it. Chatting, this most of the younger generation indulges in, wherein you're talking to somebody not through the course of dialogue but through the course of media. Dialogue, small talk, when you bump into your neighbor, the small talk that you have. Negotiation, phone call. These are the various types of dialogues that we tend to see. Now, this is the difference, or this is the kind of difference that is the most important from the exam point of view. Dialogue can be divided into formal and informal dialogue. So we shall be focusing the remaining of the session on this, and the exam point of view questions are also set on this aspect. What is a formal dialogue and what is an informal dialogue? As the picture itself says, formal always refers to place of work or wherever you are interacting with any authority. For example, while you interact with a teacher or a principal, or maybe when you go to the bank, while you interact with the bank officials, it could also have any conversation wherein you are speaking to somebody where there is some sort of authority, like for example, the post office, bank, railway station, etc. Informal dialogue, while you talk with your friends, siblings, family, etc. So this is the broad distinction of a formal dialogue and an informal dialogue. Formal conversation, that there again, we have many contexts. Professional talking, wherein you talk to your colleagues in the professional or in the office setup. A doctor talking to the patient. A public speaker, when one person addresses the audience, or a teacher addressing the students. All these are different kinds of formal conversation. Informal conversation, informal conversation between two friends. It could be girls or young boys, or between a group of friends, etc. So this is the main distinction in the kinds of dialogue there, formal and informal. Stages of a dialogue. So every dialogue has these four important stages. Every conversation or dialogue has a greeting, the beginning part, wherein both wish each other or some sort of greeting is there. And then, if required, introduction happens, or introducing themselves, or what is it, the build up, you can take it that way. And then the main conversation happens as to what the dialogue in that context requires. And lastly, the conclusion. So just look at the stages once again: greeting, introduction, main conversation, and conclusion. The greetings again differ according to the context. In formal context, the greetings that you can use are good morning, good afternoon, good evening, how do you do, how are you. If it is an informal, use these like hello, hi, how are you doing, how have you been, how are things going. The formal responses, likewise, when you are responding, you can also respond in a formal sense like good morning, good afternoon, good evening, very well, thank you, etc. If it is informal, use these words hello, hi, fine, thanks, and you, great, thanks, etc. Likewise, conclusion in a formal context, it has been a pleasure, goodbye, thank you for your time, goodbye. If it is informal, I'll have to go now, bye, I'll see you later around, bye, have a nice day, bye. A few more phrases which you can use in both the context. If it is formal, you can use these phrases. Can I help you? Let me help you. Or a lot of, anyways, lots of, a lot of, plus also could, exceptional, deal with, keep up the good work, go away, tons of, heaps of, can, we can recommend, etc. If it is informal, uh, I think there has been a slight mix up. This should have been the formal and this should have been the informal one. So in that context, the formal ones would be, please state your business permit on behalf of numerous, nevertheless, much, many, moreover, might be able to marvelous manage, maintain properly, leave, depart large quantities of a number of, is capable of, it is recommended. So once again, I would like to apologize. Just take it the other way around here. Now, let us go for a dialogue, a sample of a formal dialogue. Now, this is a dialogue wherein an employee is seeking leave. He's requesting leave from his manager. This is how a dialogue goes. Remember the four stages: greeting, introduction, the main conversation, and the conclusion. Now, this is a formal setup. As you are in an office, as you enter the manager's room, what is the first thing that you do? You wish the manager. So employee, write the name of the character, employee, two dots. Good morning, Mr. Rao. May I have a moment of your time? So the manager also wishes him back. Good morning, of course, please go ahead. Now the employee, I would like to request a day off this Friday due to a family commitment. I have ensured my tasks for this week are on schedule. Manager, he replies, I appreciate you informing me in advance. Thank you for planning your work accordingly. Your leave is approved. We saw the phases there. Then the employee replies, thank you very much, sir. Manager, you're welcome. Let me know if any assistance is needed before then. So the four stages have been clearly met: the greeting, introduction or coming to the context, the main conversation, and then the conclusion of the dialogue. If it is a sample informal dialogue between two friends, the two friends Anu and Ria. Now observe the greeting here. Anu, hey Ria, are you coming to college on Friday? Ria, nah, I'm taking the day off. Got some family stuff to attend. Anu, oh lucky you, long weekend for you then? Ria, yeah, kind of, hoping to catch up on some sleep too. Anu, nice. Don't forget to send me the notes from Thursday. Ria says, sure thing, I'll WhatsApp them to you. You can see that this conversation is definitely different from the formal one. The formal greetings are not there, and the main conversation is also very casual. And in the conclusion also, they are not going to be very formal by saying goodbye or see you later. So this is the prime example between a formal dialogue and an informal dialogue. Let us try to recapitulate what we learned through the course of this session. We had a question answer discussion session wherein We discussed about what is the importance of dialogue in real life and short stories, etc. So recapitulation of previous knowledge helped us understand the session better. Objectives of dialogue writing, session outcomes, origin of the term dialogue. What is a dialogue definition? Purpose of dialogue writing, the basic format and structure of a dialogue, the rules for writing dialogues, the types. As I told you, there are four types. The first difference would be the external dialogue and the internal dialogue. That is for our understanding. While from the exam point of view, the two types are formal and informal dialogue. And then we also saw the stages of a dialogue. In fact, we also went through two sample dialogues, one formal and one informal. Let us assess ourselves with multiple choice question. First question, what is the primary purpose of a dialogue in a story? To describe the setting, to narrate the backstory, to communicate between characters, to create suspense. The answer is option C, to communicate between characters. Which of the following is an example of inner dialogue? I'm leaving now, said Ravi. I hope I don't forget my lines, thought Priya. Can you help me with this? Asked Anil. The teacher explained the topic in detail. Remember, inner dialogue is the conversation that you have within yourself or your inner thoughts or the thoughts that occur in your mind. So the answer is option B. I hope I don't forget my lines, thought Priya. Which is not a rule for writing dialogue. Start a new paragraph for a new speaker. Include long explanations and facts in every line. Use correct punctuation and grammar. Use dialogue tags like he said or she asked. In fact, A, C, and D are right. Option B is wrong. So the answer is option B. Include long explanations and facts in every line, which is not a rule. What is a dialogue tag? The topic of conversation, a summary of the story, words like he said or she whispered that show who is speaking, the setting of the story. The answer is option C, words like he said or she whispered that show who is speaking. What are the two main types of dialogue? Spoken and written, real and imagined, formal and informal, direct and indirect. The answer is option C, formal and informal. The references used for this session. Thank you. We shall continue in the next session.